Welcome back to Giants Latest. Hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all things New York Giants. Let's talk about Kyle Pitts because his name and the Giants have been in the same conversation for the last couple of days or so, that there's potential that he could be traded to the New York Giants. And I don't see this happening. And there's a few reasons for that, but I think the biggest one is that the Giants tight end room is actually in pretty good shape. Between Daniel Bellinger, who's going into his fourth year, Theo Johnson, who, yes, is coming off an injury, but has a lot of potential to be a great tight end for them. They also have Greg Dulcich, who's been looking pretty good. They drafted Thomas Fidone II. So, they actually have a pretty good group of tight ends. On top of that, they also have Chris Manhertz, who is in his second year with the team. He knows the offense. He's a good blocker, and he's been pretty efficient with the team so far. So I actually think that the tight end room is one of the rooms that is in pretty good shape. So let's kind of talk through this a little bit, but I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I don't think I see the Giants going after Kyle Pitts. I think if they're going to make any type of move, I think it's more likely that they go either offensive line, defensive line, or wide receiver, which is what we'll get to when we talk about Gabe Davis. And, I just don't see the Pitts situation for the Giants at all. I think there are other teams that are in more dire need of a tight end than the Giants are. And this front office also has brought in all of these tight ends. So there's none from the Dave Gettleman era, none from Joe Judge. These are guys that this front office and this coaching staff has handpicked and selected to be on this roster, which means that they obviously believe in them to some degree and think that they are good additions to this football team. So, like I said, Daniel Bellinger is going into his last year as a New York Giant on his rookie deal. Joe Shane drafted him, and he it's been kind of hit or miss for the Giants. He's had some issues with injuries, but overall, he had a really productive rookie year, and I think we were expecting to see more of that. But I still think there's something left in the tank for Bellinger, and I expect to see him used quite a bit this year. Same thing for Theo Johnson. He's in his second year with the Giants. He was looking to be, again, hit or miss in his rookie year last year before he got injured. He made some really nice plays, and then he also had some drops and some issues and things. But he's a guy that I don't really worry about. I think when you look at our tight end group as a whole, they're one of the biggest groups that were severely let down by the quarterback play. So I expect to see a lot from our tight ends this year, whether it is going to be Theo Johnson, Daniel Bellinger, or Manhertz. Now, Manhertz was used primarily as a blocker, but he did get involved, and I think he would have had 2 touchdowns last year. I believe that one of them was called back for some sort of flag, surprise, surprise. But I think that he has a potential to make some plays for this offense. So do not be surprised if you see him used in the red zone as a receiver a couple times throughout this year. So, and then they have Greg Dulcich and Thomas Fidone. Now, Fidone was the top tight end recruit coming out of high school, even over Brock Bowers. So he was, supposed to have a really good college career. And then unfortunately he dealt with 2 ACLs. But from what I've heard from some of the beat writers who have been at practice, they have said to really keep your eyes on Fidone, that they think that he's got a lot of good potential. And he's a bigger guy, so he has that going for him. So, I'm curious to see what we get out of him in training camp this summer, but I think that he's a guy to watch. And then they have Greg Dulcich, who was on the team last year as well. So, you're talking about 5 tight ends, plus I'm sure they will bring in maybe 1 or 2 throughout the summer. I just don't think that they're going to make a move for Pitts. I don't think at this point where the Giants are at, they're willing to give up future capital for a tight end like Pitts. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know. I just don't see it happening. Like I said, I think there are 3 other positions that are more likely that if they're going to make any type of trade, it would be for that instead of a tight end. Now, speaking of offensive line, let's talk about Evan Neal because, there are a good amount of offensive linemen on this roster, but there is, of course, still that concern that if Andrew Thomas goes down, what are we doing at left tackle? And it looks like it's going to be James Hudson, or they're going to move Illuminor to left tackle, and they're going to have Marcus Bowe play right tackle, which I'm okay with. He's a rookie, so obviously there's some concerns there, but I have faith in him. And, when we talk about Evan Neal, they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. So he's in the final year of his contract. He obviously had a really tough go at right tackle throughout his career with the Giants. And, I was thinking about this the other night. I was getting ready for bed, and I'm just, thinking about the Giants all the time because this is what I do with my life. And, there are a lot of questions that I have about the way that Joe Shane and Brian Dable run this team. And I think they've made some good decisions, and I think they've made some really awful decisions. And what I was thinking is, after you saw 2 really awful years of Evan Neal at tackle, why would you not think about moving him to guard? Like, I just don't understand why they wasted an entire year last year of him still being forced to play the tackle position when it was obvious that you had 2 horrible years of him not succeeding in the tackle position. So I don't know. I think that kind of did him a disservice by waiting that long, knowing that he played guard a lot in tackle. And that was played a lot of guard in college, and that was his better position. So it's just frustrating to me. And then, hearing, of course, what they did with the Zudu back at tackle just drives me insane. But I think where I want to see Evan Neal this year is, I think the ideal scenario is that he is fighting with Jon Runyan to be the future left guard of this team. Now, do I have faith and hope that that is what it's going to look like? Probably not. But Jon Runyan is in the last year of his contract, and Evan Neal didn't have his 5th-year option picked up, so he should have a fire lit underneath his butt to get it together and have a really good year this year. Now, I don't see him beating out Runyan for the starting role, but I do think that there's a possibility that if he really plays well enough, that he could be in there, and maybe midway through the season, he's forced Jon Runyan to be pushed on the bench. Or if Jon Runyan gets injured again, because he's coming off a shoulder injury, that Evan Neal can slide right in at left tackle, and we can all feel confident that he's going to do his job blocking and not get Russell Wilson killed. So, there's potential for him there. I think he has been humbled. I think he's learned. I think Carmen Brasillo is a good offensive line coach. So I really think it's just up to Evan Neal now to figure it out. And, he's got one of the best next to him in Andrew Thomas. And I think that alone should provide him some sort of comfort that he can be the best that he can be. And he's not going to have the issues that he really struggled with at tackle. And, one of his biggest issues is when he's put in space, he never wins a one-on-one battle, ever. And he just gets destroyed by anyone who's lined up against. So being pushed to the inside, having experience there, having Andrew Thomas on his side, not having to worry so much about the balance and the extreme footwork of having to be on an island one-on-one with someone and do a good job of actually stopping them, I think that with those problems being eliminated, I think we're going to see a better Evan Neal. And for his sake and for our sake as Giants fans, I want that. On draft night, when he was selected, how many of us were over the moon thrilled with him? And it's just been so disappointing. And it's been one of the reasons that have held back this offensive line from being good. It's been one of the reasons why this offense has been a mess. And it's just been really frustrating. So, I think there are a lot of things that have gone wrong for him. Obviously, the injuries have played a big part of it. But I just think that he's healthy. He's fully ready to go. And he doesn't have the pressure of having to be a starter. He doesn't have the pressure of having to win one-on-one battles and figure out the balance and make sure his handwork is perfect. I think those things are all going to help him be a good, hopefully really good, above average left guard or right guard in the league. As of right now, they have him lined up at left guard, so I think that's where he will stay. But that's what I want to see from Evan Neal. And look, whether or not he is with the Giants in his 5th year next year, I just want him to be good enough this year that we can look at this offensive line and say it's not the reason why this team sucks. And hopefully the team doesn't suck, but if it does, it's likely because of the offensive line. So I just want Evan Neal to be part of the group that's like, hey, we're actually doing well this year and we're helping this team win games and score points and block the quarterback and all the things that they're supposed to be doing. So we'll see what ends up happening, but that's where we're at with Evan Neal right now. Now, let's move along to Gabe Davis, because there has been reports that the Giants brought him in. They brought him in for a workout, had conversations with him, etc. And then it seems like that's at a standstill. And what I saw most recently is that Mike Tomlin and the Steelers brought him in for a visit. Now, we know that obviously the Steelers traded away Pickens, but they brought in DK Metcalf. But I think that Gabe Davis is probably a good fit there, but I also don't hate him coming to the Giants. So the thing that is very interesting to me is that The Giants typically, if they bring guys in for a visit and they want him on the team, they usually move pretty quickly. So I think it's interesting that there hasn't been any follow up there. And maybe they left it up to Gabe Davis, which I don't really see. Maybe they just brought him in because, for old time's sake, just see what he has left in the tank. Maybe they feel like he doesn't have what they want him to have at this point in his career. So I just think it's interesting. But where I'm at right now is I think it's pretty unlikely that he ends up getting signed by the Giants. And, Darius Slayton, they re-signed him. He's going to be wide receiver 2 this year, whether or not Giants fans like it. So I think Darius Slayton has been widely underrated, and I think that he is primed to have a good year this year. And if that means that he's going to take over and he is going to replace a potential Gabe Davis, then so be it. But I don't know. What do you guys think about Gabe Davis? I think the fact that he's going to Pittsburgh and then the Giants seem like they didn't bring him in for a second meeting. There was no follow-up or contract offered or anything like that. There's been no reports about that. So I think the Giants are they brought him in for due diligence and decided that he is not the way of the future. So I expect him to probably sign with Pittsburgh. I think that makes the most sense for him and for the Steelers, but we will find out soon enough. Hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all things Giants.